It has been more than 50 years since the first superhero show I truly fell in love with appeared on the small screen. Even now, the image of Lynda Carter spinning in a sparkling glow and transforming into a warrior woman in her iconic armour still appears clearly in my mind as if I had just seen it yesterday. Back then, Wonder Woman wasn't just a symbol of strength or femininity. She was a strange combination of both, soft yet invincible. To a child like me at the time, that character felt like she had stepped out of a dream, making me wait for the broadcast just to see her one more time. But as I grew older and started learning about what happened behind the scenes, I realised that the show hid many odd stories. No one ever told us that Lynda Carter had faced harassment right on set. Few people knew that actors had been injured by explosive props, or that crew members had to be rushed to first aid because of practical effects testing done before CGI ever existed. Even an episode that seemed harmless was terminated simply because a cosmetics sponsor believed the image of Wonder Woman didn't align with their brand. So what really happened behind the scenes of Wonder Woman? It's time to reveal 20 little-known secrets, strange, funny, sometimes a bit unsettling fragments from the making of the show, and ones that will surely make you look at the series in a whole new light. 20. Deflecting bullets. With real hands and burns that never made the news. Looking back today, the spark effects from Wonder Woman's bracelets may seem naive, but in 1975, it was the result of a risky technique. There was no CGI, no digital compositing. Everything had to be created using mechanics and mini explosives. The technical team attached grain-sized firecrackers to the surface of Carter's metal bracelets and hid the ignition switch inside her palm to create the spark shooting effect when deflecting bullets. It sounded flashy, but on set it was a whole different story. The distance between the explosion point and the actor's real skin was only a few centimeters. Just one mistimed cue or misaligned camera angle and the charge would explode off target. One stunt performer was lightly burned while standing close to the frame to assist with blocking. 2 pyrotechnic technicians suffered burns on the back of their hands while adjusting the bracelets after the charges had already been mounted. Carter herself once had a spark graze her wrist during a close-up shot. Luckily, it didn't leave an injury. The studio covered up the entire incident, fearing audiences would think the show was dangerous for actors. On TV, Wonder Woman blocked bullets bare-handed like an invincible goddess. But off-screen, the entire crew had to time every button press, every camera movement, and every skin-to-metal distance just to keep everyone safe. 19. A goddess on screen, but unprotected behind the scenes. In the late 1970s, the image of Lynda Carter in red and blue armour had become the dream of an entire generation. She appeared on magazine covers, wall calendars, and even in the bedrooms of thousands of teenagers across America. But behind the image of a powerful female superhero was a more bitter reality. Carter herself was once a victim of harassment right in her own workplace. Her costume-changing area was placed directly behind the filming set. It seemed like a private spot, but a cameraman found a way to exploit it. He secretly drilled a small hole into the partition wall, just enough to observe inside while Carter was changing clothes between scenes. No one noticed. The shooting schedule was packed. The noise of machines and constant movement of people drowned everything out. Only when a lighting crew member noticed an unusual round hole in the wall did everything come to light. That cameraman was quietly dismissed from the crew, with no media coverage, no press release, no public outcry. The TV network chose to clean things up quietly, because any scandal at that time could collapse the whole project. Hollywood back then was used to hiding scandals to protect the brand, not to protect the actors. And the emotional damage Carter suffered, no one mentioned it, and she only revealed the story many decades later. 18. the pressure to maintain a superhero figure, and brutal body discipline. To appear in front of the camera as a national symbol, Lynda Carter didn't just have to act, she had to maintain a body that was nearly unrealistic by the standards of that time. The studio required her to always fit into small-sized costumes, forcing Carter into a strict body-shaping regimen. Before swimsuit scenes or tight-fitting costumes, she had to cut salt completely, restrict water, and follow a dry body routine for 24 straight hours so her muscles would stand out clearly on screen. Meals on those days sometimes consisted only of boiled eggs or a few lettuce leaves, just enough to stay standing, but not enough to be strong. At times, Carter had to lean against the set wall, her face pale from dizziness. She wasn't just playing a superhero, her body had to become a product of Hollywood standards at the time. Though she didn't blame anyone, years later she admitted that Wonder Woman might not have carried such symbolic weight without those sacrifices, but the price was certainly not cheap. 17. The first costume version nearly became a television disaster. The image of Wonder Woman in the public's memory is tied to the red-blue starry armour with tight cuts. But in the early phase, designer Donfeld took a different approach: a two-piece bikini. It looked great on sketches and was perfect for underwater scenes until actual filming. After just a few dives and turns, the bikini began to slip, the ties loosened, and the crew had to watch Carter's every movement closely to avoid a live-on-air incident. The camera had to pan with extreme caution, and the costume team kept rushing in and out to make adjustments. After a long, stressful shooting day, the decision was made: ditch the bikini. In its place came a tight blue wetsuit with white stars, still form-fitting, still American in spirit, but much more secure. When the outfit finally stabilized on screen, few knew it only existed because the whole crew had breathed a sigh of relief that nothing was exposed on the first day. 16. The magical spin was invented by the actress. Not in the script, one of Wonder Woman's most iconic features, the scene where Diana spins and transforms into a superhero, was actually not in the comic or original script. The writers had planned to handle it with a traditional costume change cut, but Carter felt it was too clumsy and lacked magic. During a test shoot, she suggested, "What if I spin like a dancer and stop?" The first spin had no effects other than flying hair and a twisting skirt. But the crew immediately knew they had found something new. In the early episodes, Carter had to spin precisely into a marked position on the floor, then change outfits during cut scenes, both manual and exhausting. Only when ratings improved did the team add light flashes and sound effects, completing the image that viewers would remember. Later on, DC Comics even incorporated the spin move into the comics, as if it had always been there. 15. A script was killed just because it touched. The cosmetics industry. In the archives of Wonder Woman exists a script called The Velvet Touch that almost no one has ever seen. Its plot revolved around a conspiracy involving toxic cosmetics that harmed users' health. The idea was not controversial artistically, but it hit a sensitive area. At the time, Carter was a brand ambassador for Maybelline, and the show's airtime was bought by female-targeted sponsors, especially cosmetics brands. Fearing a chain reaction and media risks, the network pulled the episode from the production schedule just days before filming. No scandal, no questions, and no public statement was issued. The script was shelved, the director reassigned to another episode, and everything moved on as if it never existed. This is a rare example showing that sometimes a television series is not driven by creativity or technology, but by advertising budgets. 14. Lynda Carter once hung from a real helicopter. Audiences often assume that dangerous scenes are the work of stunt doubles, but in Wonder Woman there was at least one shot where Carter did it herself. the scene where she clings to the side of a helicopter taking off in the episode Ansha 77. The shot required the actor's face to be clearly visible, making the test with a stunt double ineffective. The idea of cutting the scene was considered, but Carter offered to do it. She was strapped in with a safety harness, did several trials on the ground, then performed the scene while the helicopter hovered low. The network disliked the risk, but Carter saw it as the only chance to go crazy just once. On screen, the shot lasted just a few seconds, but it carried the real feel that effects at the time couldn't recreate. 13. A chaotic wardrobe reflecting the network switch. Casual viewers often only remember the red-blue bodysuit, but if you look closely at the first season, you'll see Wonder Woman sometimes wore a star-covered pleated skirt, sometimes a cape, and sometimes switched to tight suits for action. In fact, this was the result of a long experimental period. A BC, the network behind Season 1, wanted to create a formal World War II era vibe, skirts for diplomatic missions, capes for grand appearances, or to hide transitions between the main actress and the stunt double. By Season 2, the rights had shifted to CBS with a modern setting. They felt skirts were too cumbersome and didn't suit the action pacing. The skirt disappeared, the bodysuit stayed, the cape was only used for technical needs. As a result, Wonder Woman's wardrobe accidentally became a mini-map showing how American television shifted from formal aesthetics to practical and filmable criteria. 12. Before becoming a superhero, she made a living. On the lounge stage, few would think that a 1970s television icon was once a vocalist who sang night gigs in lounges and bars. In the early 1970s, Lynda Carter roamed across the American Southwest with the band The Garfin Gathering, performing in casinos, hotels, and lounges from Nevada to Arizona. Even earlier, she had performed with Gary Berghoff when he was still an unknown drummer before becoming famous in MASH. Even while donning the armor of Wonder Woman, Carter quietly stepped into the recording studio. The solo album Portrait debuted in 1978 with a soft pop ballad style, slightly melancholic, fitting the tastes of that decade. One of the songs was even used directly in the soundtrack of an episode, letting viewers hear the original voice without realizing it. After Wonder Woman, Carter didn't abandon music. She made TV specials, performed live, released new albums, and even won an Emmy. For gamers years later, her voice unexpectedly returned in Fallout 4, where Carter both voiced and sang music for the character she played. To the general public, she is forever Wonder Woman. But to the stage scene, Carter is a lounge star with a warmth all her own. 11. The first Wonder Woman on TV had no superpowers. Before Carter stepped onto the screen with divine aura, ABC had released an earlier version in 1974 starring Kathy Lee Crosby. But this trial version nearly cut out all superhero elements. No lasso of truth, no bullet-deflecting bracelets, no extraordinary powers. Instead, the character functioned like a government agent dressed like a sports athlete, a V-neck top and shorts, in an Olympic chic style. The concept was based on a special comic era when Diana Prince was stripped of her powers and lived as an ordinary agent. It was a novel idea, but ahead of its time. Audiences wanted a mythological superhero, not a TV-style action character. The film achieved acceptable ratings, but didn't generate momentum for a full series. That gap opened the door for the 1975 version, this time with American aesthetics, Amazonian mythology, and the arrival of Carter, who fit the image that audiences had quietly longed for. 10. The actress who played Wonder Girl didn't want to be Wonder Girl. Not everyone who joined Wonder Woman felt excited. Actress Deborah Winger, who played Drusilla, Diana's younger sister, was originally expected to be a supporting wing for the series. But Winger's inner feelings were quite the opposite. She disliked the red star mini-skirt outfit, and even more so the idea of being a cute sidekick to Carter. Years later, on David Letterman's talk show, Winger recalled that she hated the role from start to finish because the character felt shallow, flashy, and undeserving of respect. To prove her point, she took off the imitation Wonder Girl dress and threw it onto Letterman's desk, to a mix of laughter and shock from the audience. Side matters, including a legal dispute involving Carter's then-husband, further complicated Winger's experience. In the end, most of the public only remembered Drusilla as a cute supporting character, but to Winger, it was a role she wanted to leave behind as soon as possible. 9. A strange time jump from World War II straight into the 1970s. If you watch the full series, you'll notice a bizarre scene transition that was barely explained. The first part takes place during World War II. Then, in the second part, the world suddenly jumps to 1970s America. No one in the show asks why, and no one questions how time passed. Behind it was a purely technical decision. ABC produced Season 1, but when CBS took over, they wanted to bring the character into modern times to better connect with the audience. Lynda Carter remained Diana Prince, but Steve Trevor, still played by Lyle Waggoner, was reimagined as the son of the original Steve Trevor, a logic only 1970s television dared to use. The opening episode of Season 2 presented the transition as if it were completely natural. Many viewers at the time even thought they were watching a new series, only with Carter returning with the same face and the same bracelets. 8. Comic book flair was trimmed to make room for a serious spy. In the 1970s, American TV was obsessed with the camp style. Exaggerated superheroes, fight scenes like dancing, cheerful music, and sarcastic dialogue. Wonder Woman in its first season also featured many of those elements, but when CBS took over, the entire direction was reset. Less flashiness, less camp tone, less comedy, replaced with action and investigation. Almost like a light detective series. Lynda Carter was very pleased. She once said she didn't want to turn Diana Prince into a comic character. She wanted a strong female figure, with a voice, with purpose, with a reason to exist on screen. The result was a more subdued, less cheerful season, but one that was more enduring for adult viewers. It didn't spark a ratings explosion, but it built a legacy. 7. HD technology exposed every old trick. When Wonder Woman was remastered and released in HD format, a whole world of 1970s rudimentary effects was suddenly revealed. Swimming scenes clearly in a pool, not the sea. Car lifting scenes showed the hydraulic jack beneath. Green screens revealed their edges, with lighting mismatched to the foreground. Everything that old CRT televisions used to blur naturally was now exposed down to the pixel. Interestingly, fans didn't get angry. On the contrary, many shared screenshots as if they had discovered behind-the-scenes secrets. That feeling was like opening an old photo album and seeing the glue behind the pictures, not ruining the memory, but making it feel much more real. A superhero on a CRT screen might have been more perfect, but a superhero showing her rigging in HD is charming in her own way. 6. The series was heavily censored because of its feminist image. In the context of American television, in the mid-1970s, Wonder Woman was not only an entertaining superhero series, but also a dangerous act of crossing the line. From its very first episodes, the show faced strict censorship from the network itself and from sponsors. Not because of violence or sexuality, but because of its overly explicit feminist image. A woman who was not only stronger than men, but who also made decisions for them, commanded them, and frequently rescued them from danger. This, for many people at the time, was considered to be going too far. There were episodes that, after filming was completed, were ordered to cut down scenes in which Wonder Woman overwhelmingly defeated male villains. Some lines of dialogue that emphasized Diana's intelligence and strategic ability were also edited, softening her leadership role. There were even episodes that were rescheduled or not rebroadcast because they were judged to be too strong for the traditional image of women, a phrase vague enough to conceal the network's very real concern that male audiences would feel uncomfortable. The irony is that this very censorship unintentionally proved the weight and impact of Wonder Woman. 5. The costume did not allow comfortable sitting. Wonder Woman's costume looked dazzling, iconic, and nearly perfect on screen, but behind the scenes, it was one of the most uncomfortable things for Lynda Carter. The outfit was designed with a tightly cinched corset around the waist and high-waisted short shorts, so tight that sitting down became a real challenge. During long shooting days that lasted for hours, Carter was almost unable to sit comfortably between takes because just sitting in the wrong position would cause the corset to press hard against her abdomen and ribs, making it difficult to breathe and causing pain. Instead of resting on a chair like the other actors, Carter often had to stand leaning against a wall, lightly brace herself on a table, or walk slowly to keep her body in the most tolerable condition. There were shooting days when she stood continuously for many hours simply to avoid the feeling of being trapped inside the costume. This not only caused physical exhaustion, but also affected her stamina when filming action scenes, which already demanded a great deal of energy. Costumes at that time did not have stretchy materials or ergonomic designs like those used today. Everything was made by hand, prioritizing how it looked on camera rather than the comfort of the actor. 4. The production team feared that Wonder Woman would affect the American family order. In internal documents from the Wonder Woman production company in the 1970s, there was a phrase that appeared more often than one might expect: affecting the American family order. At first glance, it sounds abstract, but in the context of that era, it was a very specific concern. Wonder Woman was not just an entertainment program, but the image of an independent woman who stepped out of the domestic space to enter the world, fight, make decisions, and act without needing anyone's permission. This made a portion of network executives and sponsors genuinely uneasy. Carter didn't avoid this at all. In many interviews, she said that if television had the chance to feature a woman as a superhero, then that character shouldn't just be pretty, shouldn't just fly and jump, but had to carry something that truly meant something. The producers stood with her despite pressure from networks wanting lighter, more cheerful content. At a time when women still had very few powerful images on TV, that was a bolder decision than most people remember. 3. When she got the role, Carter was nearly broke. Few could imagine that the face of 1970s Hollywood once had to count every dollar just to pay rent. Before Wonder Woman, Carter was nearly unknown, singing in nightclubs, competing in beauty contests, acting in commercials, but without a role that truly made her name. By the time she got the call for the 1975 audition, her bank account held only a few dozen dollars, enough for a few meals but not enough to last another month. Even after being cast, Carter had to borrow money from friends because filming hadn't started yet, and she hadn't been paid. It took months before the first episode aired and began attracting viewers, and only then could Carter afford to cover her own living costs. Years later, when recounting that story, she said that it was precisely that stage of no money, no security, no idea what the future would be, that made her never romanticize fame. 2. A rare case where the female lead was paid more than her male co-star. In an industry that traditionally favored higher pay for men, Wonder Woman created an interesting exception. Carter received a higher salary than her male co-star from season 1. Her initial contract was $3,500 per episode, a fairly high rate for a female actress at the time, and increased to $6,000 when the series switched networks. Lyle Waggoner, despite being already famous from the Carol Burnett show, still earned less. There was no speech about an equal pay revolution. No feminist slogan was hung. But the fact that the female lead earned more was a clear signal that the series revolved around her. Later, when asked, Carter said simply, "I don't know if I was the first or not. I just know I deserved it." Viewers at the time thought so too. The ratings proved it first. 1. Most superhero shows have been rebooted, except Carter's Wonder Woman. For decades, Hollywood has constantly remade its classic icons. Hulk got remade, The Bionic Woman got rebooted, The $6 Million Man went through at least 4 negotiations. But Carter's Wonder Woman still stands alone like an island. No TV remake has made it past development. Some projects came close to greenlighting. Some had already cast actors, but all were eventually shut down. Partly because Carter's shadow was too big. Partly because Carter herself repeatedly refused to do cameo-style roles like the older version appearing to greet the audience, because she felt that Wonder Woman of that era was a product of a specific historical context, not something that could be recreated by technology or budget. In many people's memories, that superheroine still spins in a ring of light and leaps into danger. No CGI, no slow motion, no multiverse. And perhaps that's why no one wants to replace it.